think this is it.
Good evening. I'm Dick Hartzell, television writer and producer. This is my colleague, Dr. Ralph Patrick, research associate in anthropology at Washington University. And this is our workshop. And this is our raw material. We spent a year collecting it. A year trying to discover what kinds of people we Americans are, what we think is important, what we value. Everything we learned is recorded on film. And now, from this record, we present our findings. Each time we sketch one type of American: teenage boy, a mass production worker, a poet. Each time we add one more profile in value. We call our report The Search for America. Tonight, we conclude the report begun last time, the profile and value of the Navajo Indian. Like many of the traditionally pastoral peoples of the earth, Arabs emerging from feudalism, Africans moving out of the Stone Age, the Navajos are reaching for modern government, industry, agriculture, and medicine. When any large group of free people begin to move, whether through space or time, they tend to string out. Some take the lead, most bunch in the middle, some straggle in the rear, and many fall in the dust and are trampled. Last time we met a family which is probably moving along at the front of the middle group. Tonight, Dr. Patrick and I want you to meet, as we did, the leaders of the Navajo tribe. We went to Window Rock, Arizona to see the tribal council in session and to ask the tribal chairman and other officials about their accomplishments and about their plans for the future. We also wanted to know about the welfare of those Navajos who might fall in the dust. First, we hired an airplane and took a short aerial tour. The Navajo reservation spreads westward from northern New Mexico into Arizona. It's an empty and a lonely land which will not support a dense population. The Navajos live in scattered family groups of log houses called hogans. Each group has its herd of sheep, its patch of corn, and its pickup truck. The deep canyons and high mesas make travel difficult, and one of the major work relief projects of the tribe is the building of roads. The money for projects of the tribe comes from the tribal sawmill, which is fed by the tribe's rich pine forests, and from royalties produced by recently discovered oil and uranium. Under the supervision of the Bureau of Indian Affairs, all this is administered by the Tribal Council and the officers of the tribe from the beautiful headquarters at Window Rock, Arizona. Until recently, the Navajos have not really been a tribe. They never had a chief. They never had village head men because there were no villages. They have been ruled instead by a code of mutual helpfulness within the family and the clan. Families arrive at group decisions by discussion, and unless there is unanimous agreement, there is no action. Such a loose organization may be fine for survival in the semi-desert of Arizona, but it gave the bureaucratic United States government fits. The Bureau of Indian Affairs needed a central organization with which to deal. So in 1923, the Tribal Council of the Navajo tribe was formed. This headquarters was built in 1934. From 1922 until 1947, the Navajo people looked upon the Tribal Council as a tool of the Bureau of Indian Affairs, a mere rubber stamp. And then, in 1947, things began to happen. Congress passed a rehabilitation bill. The Tribal Council was reorganized and a committee system set up so that the Navajos could take over the administration of the health and welfare, natural resources, education, law, and order. The administration building, formerly occupied almost entirely by Bureau people, began to fill up with Navajos eager to run their own affairs. The Tribal Council began to be a true forum for the people. The tribe is organized into chapters, each electing a councilman. Most of the councilmen grew up in the years when the tribe was resisting the Bureau's education program. Therefore, they do not speak English. This councilman is complaining that one of the corps of bright young English-speaking Navajo tribal clerks was insolent when he presented his expense account. The English-speaking voice is the official interpreter.
Many of us come here after we have pawned some of our jewelry to the trader so that we could have some cash to start with. And furthermore, many of our councilmen are non-English speaking. And whatever comments are made by these girls in English, possibly might be assumed to say, let's punch that guy in the mouth. That's the only thing we can get, is non-English speaking elements.
Paul Jones, the tribal chairman, is one of the few who translates his own speeches. One of the two women in the council is Annie Wanika, brilliant chairman of the Tribal Health Committee. We have an appointment to interview her. During consideration of the budget for administration, one councilman advocated a salary raise for one particular clerk. This brought the executive secretary, J. Maurice McCabe, to the defense of his salary schedule.
Now, the point that I wanted to get to is this. If we have council members sponsoring various tribal employees, then we're going to have one heck of a mess. Pardon my parlance, but that's what's going to develop. We will have one probably who isn't qualified, trained, doesn't have the proper education, whisper in one of you gentlemen's ears, I think I'm worth $6,000, $7,000. Another one will come in and say, well, I think I'm worth a little bit more. And if we begin to sponsor personnel, here we go. This is what the prevailing wage scale is, but you people want them up here. Pretty soon we'll be like the Mexican army. We'll have more generals than we have soldiers.
J. Maurice McCabe was born on the reservation and educated in mission schools. After finishing high school, he went to work as a bookkeeper for a firm in Phoenix, taking correspondence courses and going to night school to learn accounting. Today, he lives in one of the ranch homes built by the tribe at Window Rock for tribal employees. Our anthropologist guide and counselor, John Adair, snapped a family portrait for his album. Mr. McCabe told us that the tribe employs about 1,000 people in all its projects. The annual payroll is about $3 million. The annual budget over $12 million. He has 65 administrative personnel, all Navajo except key personnel and department heads like the 5 lawyers, the chief of the police force, the manager of the tribal sawmill, the mining engineers at the uranium mines and the oil wells. We asked him if the tribe hoped to have these positions filled with Navajos as they were trained.
Currently, we have Navajos in colleges taking this type of training, but we do not feel that they will be ready to assume a department, a position as a department head within our organization unless they have had some outside experience to complement their education.
What are some of your other administrative problems in working in the tribal government?
Organization. As I pointed out, we have come this far with more or less a small staff, and while we were not formally organized, I would say that we had a very well functioning organization. But we have come to the time now that we will require complete reorganization, defining duties and responsibilities, and a delegation of authority to carry out all of the programs which we have budgeted for in our tribal budget.
Mr. McCabe, a moment ago you mentioned the modern uranium age, and we've been talking about the training of young Navajos in technical professions and other professions. I'm wondering to what extent the Navajo people may have to alter their traditional way of life in taking their place in this uranium age you mentioned?
Well, I should like to answer that question in this manner. The Navajo people, since the end of World War II, have taken a very definite interest in education. I have had various visitations on the reservation. I have talked to some of the older, uneducated, if I may say, Navajo men, and I have asked them if they were to live their lives again, what would they do? Invariably, their answer would be, first, I would learn the white man's language. From there on, I could shift for myself if I could just speak English. Nothing was said about technical training or like that. The emphasis was on the fact that he would have to go to school and learn the language. After he learned the language, he would be in a position to compete. Along that same line, I should like to say that these very same people have indicated to me that they have encouraged their young people to attend school and to become educated, and as they put it to me, so they would not have to do the things I did. By that they meant scratch out a living on this desolate reservation of ours from herding sheep or raising livestock.
What does that mean then in terms of the future development of life here in this desolate reservation? I mean, what will take the place of herding sheep?
I can visualize industrialization of the reservation, and I can visualize a trend to education so that the young people can become educated and either assume and take up jobs in industry that might relocate here or move away from the reservation. I say move away from the reservation, but I mean it in this respect, that they will move from the reservation to seek employment, and they will always return here to visit with the people and perhaps even maintain homes here.
Speaking of that, Mr. McCabe, what are some of the values of Navajo culture and the Navajo way of life which either you personally or the tribe would want to see preserved and not lost?
Well, the Navajo people feel a oneness, if I may say, with nature. The Navajo people are a genuine people insofar as kindness is concerned, reverence, patience, and a deep feeling for religion.
Annie Wanika is the daughter of Chi Dodge, the first chairman of the Navajo Tribal Council and builder of the first really large sheep ranch, a traditional way of life still dear to Annie's heart. We talked with her in the corner of the tribal chairman's office. Since she is chairman of the Tribal Health Committee, we asked her what were the major problems. Pneumonia, infant mortality, and tuberculosis continue to be the big killers of her people. She said that great strides were being made in the acceptance of white man's medicine. Hospitals were overflowing, penicillin shots were eagerly sought for every illness. Sanatoriums, even surgery for tuberculosis, gained new converts every day. But you still can't make a Navajo believe that disease is caused by a bug, and she knows of 4 new young medicine men being trained in her own neighborhood. There is a long way to go. She said that many young Navajos who were getting legal and medical educations which would be helpful on the reservation had become accustomed to the comforts of city life and were remaining there.
Is it possible for the Navajo people to hold on to the old way of life and still make an adjustment to the 20th century?
That's a very hard question to answer. No, I don't think so.
What are some of the things they will have to give up in order to?
Well, just like we've been talking about sanitation, that they have to improve. And they have to move into a city in order to adjust themselves with this 20th century that you are talking about. Being back here up in the Black Mountains, not near any city nor any community where they have all of these activities, then you just cannot fit yourself into any of these civilization that a white man enjoys. You have to give up a lot of things.
And do the old people realize this, and do the young people realize this?
Yes, it has been realized, but there isn't much done about it.
But yet the old people don't seem to hold the young people back, do they?
No. We don't intend to do that, and I've never heard anybody trying to do that as a Navajo.
Which things do you think would not have to be given up?
I don't believe the religious will not be given up for a long, long time. I don't think the white man gives up theirs too. They hold it to them wherever they go. Of course, we don't have churches to go to. We have these night scenes and a lot of these other dances that we attend. If we carried that to New York, why, people in New York will think, well, what's wrong with that Indian that just came to New York, holding all those night chants out in the streets or parks, wherever it is. But the white people do have their church. They go to church in a house, and those churches are all over the country. Wherever they go, there's a church that they belong to, so they don't have difficulty going to that church. But as an Indian, believing in your own ceremonies and your own religious, I don't believe you're fit to go into that community at all. But many times we'll just have to go along with many of these missionaries that are on the reservation, trying to convert them into their religion, and sometimes you find it in big cities. And they will sort of remind you, well, this is the church that the missionary was talking about back out on the reservation, or maybe I'll try and go in and see what is going on. I guess we'll just have to go along with what is offered to us in these places.
Now, on the matter of religion, you said that there are not Navajo churches, but isn't it true that the reservation between the four sacred mountains in itself is the proper place for Navajo religion to go on?
That's right. We cannot hold it beyond that four sacred mountains.
Now, does this affect the return of the people from these cities who want to get back and participate in the religious life?
They love to come back and participate in this whole ceremonies. For that one thing, it makes them come back, even from Los Angeles. The whole carload of Navajos will come back just to attend the squad dance. They love to attend it.
And the same would go for the nine-night chants.
That's right.
I get the impression that the entire reservation, the entire area within the sacred mountains is like a church.
I guess that's the way to look at it, from your view.
What about your view, Mrs. White?
Well, we attend these different ceremonies, and we don't call it church, so it's very hard to say church.
Yes, of course.
In a certain sense, the Hogan is really the sacred place of worship, isn't it?
That's right. And many of them are outdoors.
What about the language?
The language, some of these children are not taught the Navajo language, especially these young people that are just growing up. Just like my own brother's daughter, Cynthia. She doesn't know a word of Navajo.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing from your point?
Well, I believe that's decided by the family. I wouldn't answer that question for them. If they desire to have their children not learn a Navajo language, why, that's their business, I think.
Mrs. Juanita, are there some things that you would hope, some other things from the Navajo way, besides the religion, that you would hope would be saved and in the new way of life?
Yes, arts is for one thing that I believe we should really hold and improve it.
You mean like silver and rug weaving?
Yes, that's right. And the culture will not change for a long, long time. And some of those things I believe we should hold. And I don't know which one would be, because we'll just see it in years to come, which we're still holding and which we lost, because we're losing a lot of our religious stories and many other things that we've already lost. So time will tell which we're keeping.
Time alone will tell which we'll keep. Paul Jones, the tribal chairman, is a man who's been giving time a helping hand for quite a while. As a young man, he was a district supervisor for the Bureau of Indian Affairs in a remote area. He introduced the pickup truck, and he discovered that the Navajo people are quick to see that a truck is better than a horse. Paul Jones is proud of his administration, of the $5 million trust fund for scholarship, of the work relief program, of the program which provides clothes for all Navajo school children, of free eyeglasses and prenatal care, the sawmill, the oil wells, and uranium mines, with legally sound royalty agreements to pay for it all. He looks forward eagerly to the coming Navajo Dam, for which he lobbied and which will irrigate thousands of acres. He expects that a new power plant the tribe is contracting for will provide on-reservation jobs by attracting new industry. And with an eye on future elections, he says many things have only been begun. We asked him if there were any particular obstacles in terms of the traditional Navajo way of life which would hinder the progress and the activities of the tribe.
However, the old people, particularly the medicine men who lead the religious life, the old do have some objection to modern things, but not all. Even our medicine men are forsaking some of the old things that they firmly, we thought, believed in, who would change their mind for a nominal compensation.
Do you think it's a good thing or a bad thing that the Navajo old people tend to be quite willing to pick up the ways that the young people have learned from the white man?
I'll have to answer that with, in my own case. I have in early life accepted the new way of living, the white man's way of living, and I can't point to anything where I could really feel sorry that I have left the old way, even though I have traditionally been instructed by my grandfather, my father and mother and so on. When I was left in school and later on shipped for myself, I found it easier to pick up the white man's way of life than the old way.
I've heard it said that the old medicine man is slowly going out of existence. How would you react to this, Mr. Jones?
We've had a number of our medicine men in various hospitals for various ailments. And one that I had reference to when I mentioned that in Washington was over in the Osharon Sanatorium, Tucson. An old medicine man from Black Mountain was out there, and I asked him point blank, "Don't you think your medicine could do you some good?" He said, "I tried them, they weren't doing me any good, so here I am." There were two of them. So there are a lot of medicine men losing ground. However, some of them stay in their business just for what they can get out of in the way of compensation.
Mr. Jones, we were talking with a young man the other day, and he said that he thought that the blessing way, Hajonji, would be the last thing in Navajo religion to die out. Would you care to comment on that?
That's to a great extent correct. In my own family incident of recent date, my mother-in-law went to the hospital for 2 months. The first thing that before she could take her life again among her own people was to have a blessed wish ceremony to ease her mind that she's back in, with her own people, even though she had been in an area where she had no contact with Navajos except the doctors.
Mr. Jones, what in life do you cherish the most? What do you hold the most dearly?
I believe there are many things, above all the education that was my lot. While I would have had enjoyed life much more fuller, much more broader, possibly with a better education, I believe that's the most outstanding. And the enjoyment that I have with the outside world, that I'm beginning to be understood to a point that I am contact from the outside world to a great extent. My advice to the outside world is sought. Even from the political friends of mine, they come to me, what would be your idea on this problem affecting the Indians? While we feel that, I feel that the problem of other tribes is not always the same about Navajos. Nevertheless, I do feel that people think well enough of me to ask my advice on some of those things, and that is something that I hold very dear as far as I'm concerned.
An old way of life is dying, and Paul Jones welcomes the new. But the thing he holds most dear is the tribute that has been the goal of life among his people for centuries. To so live that you might grow in wisdom and skill to the point that others will seek your help. I'm sure Mr. Jones won't mind if we allow a woman to have the last word. John Adair asked Annie Wanika why the Navajos seem to welcome new ideas so much more readily than other Indians.
Well, the changes are so fast, and I'm quite sure the Navajos have realized that we cannot stand still. We got to lift this blanket and go along with other people.
We've got to lift this blanket and go along with other people. Dr. Patrick, I'm sure there are many painful problems we've glossed over, but this still seems to me like a thrilling prelude to great things to come for a great people.
The Navajo people have long been remarkable for their flexibility, for their ability to grow and to change with changing conditions, for their ability to borrow from other peoples and yet to keep the basic values which make them Navajo. The present and the future pose many problems for the Navajo. Overpopulation on the reservation, problems of conflict between Navajo ideas of harmony with the universe and the family, and white American ideas of striving, competition, and success. But these problems today are being attacked in exciting new ways by people who believe in the possibilities for creative growth of the Navajo way of life. There's the development of the Tribal Council, the tribal scholarship programs, the tribal development of resources on the reservation. But perhaps most exciting of all, the spirit of the Navajo people as they face a world of rapid change that has not overwhelmed them yet.
This is National Educational Television of the Navajo tribe. We went to Window Rock, Arizona to see the Tribal Council in session and to ask the tribal chairman and other officials about their accomplishments and about their plans for the future. We also wanted to know about the welfare of those Navajos who might fall in the dust. First, we hired an airplane and took a short aerial tour. The Navajo reservation spreads westward from northern New Mexico into Arizona. It's an empty and a lonely land which will not support a dense population. The Navajos live in scattered family groups of log houses called hogans. Each group has its herd of sheep, its patch of corn, and its pickup truck. The deep canyons and high mesas make travel difficult, and one of the major work relief projects of the tribe is the building of roads. The money for projects of the tribe comes from the tribal sawmill, which is fed by the tribe's rich pine forests, and from royalties produced by recently discovered what we value. Everything we learned is recorded on film. And now, from this record, we present our findings. Each time we sketch one type of American: teenage boy, a mass production worker, a poet. Each time we add one more profile in value. We call our report The Search for America.
I think this is it.
Good evening. I'm Dick Hartzell, television writer and producer. This is my colleague, Dr. Ralph Patrick, research associate in anthropology at Washington University. And this is our workshop. And this is our raw material. We spent a year collecting it. A year trying to discover what kinds of people we Americans are, what we think is important: oil and uranium. Under the supervision of the Bureau of Indian Affairs, all this is administered by the Tribal Council and the officers of the tribe from the beautiful headquarters at Window Rock, Arizona. Until recently, the Navajos have not really been a tribe. They never had a chief. They never had village head men because there were no villages. They have been ruled instead by a code of mutual helpfulness within the family and the clan. Families arrive at group decisions by discussion, and unless there is unanimous agreement, there is no action. Such a loose organization may be fine for survival in the semi-desert of Arizona, but it gave the bureaucratic United States government fits. The Bureau of Indian Affairs needed a central organization with which to deal. So in 1923, the Tribal Council of the Navajo tribe was formed. This headquarters was built in 1934. Tonight, we conclude a report begun last time, the profile and value of the Navajo Indian. Like many of the traditionally pastoral peoples of the earth, Arabs emerging from feudalism, Africans moving out of the Stone Age, the Navajos are reaching for modern government, industry, agriculture, and medicine. When any large group of free people begin to move, whether through space or time, they tend to string out. Some take the lead, most bunch in the middle. Some straggle in the rear, and many fall in the dust and are trampled. Last time we met a family which is probably moving along at the front of the middle group. Tonight, Dr. Patrick and I want you to meet, as we did, the leaders